all that drunkenness seems to bring. I guess some people think they're having a good time, but if you're not drunk yourself, it looks like you walk through the gates of hell or something in some areas.
A lot of things that are with me today, in my memories, about attempts to escape from the reality of what was going on, the drunkenness. And we see a lot of Indian people who are drunk. They may be the only warriors who are saying that they don't want to accept anything anymore, one more day of white society, and that they would just soon kill themselves drinking. Slow death. I've thought many times and along those lines, because I myself went through it, and I didn't want to accept one more day of living in a society that was crushing and devastating and murdering the culture of our people and the spirituality.
In the 1950s, the Eisenhower administration tried a new solution to the problems on the reservation. It was called termination. The government pressured Indians to leave the reservation and move to the city.
When they get to the city, they expect, and they've heard rumors of $5, $6, $7 an hour jobs, nice apartments, running water, bathrooms, showers, and they expect to find this.
Well, what these new urban Indians usually found were ghettos, minimum wage jobs, unemployment, poverty, and despair.
The man of the family can't cope with these problems, as I say. He's never been faced with them on a reservation. On a reservation, at least he could always go out and kill a deer or go out and hunt or fish and bring meat home to his family. Here in the city, there's nothing for him.
In the late 1960s, out of the urban red ghettos created by the government's policy, grew AIM, the American Indian Movement. Among the early leaders of this emerging liberation movement were men like Dennis Banks and Leonard Peltier.
In 1959, when Eisenhower was pushing the termination policy and it was trying to relocate all the Indians into the major cities, right? And Turtle Mountain was, I think, was number 3 on the list to be fully terminated. And we were given, the people were given an option either to be relocated or to just stay on a reservation, not receive no benefits, no whatever. And at that time, I started attending a lot of meetings with my father, who was going to a lot of meetings around the community. And I got interested in it from then on, because I heard some very emotional speeches made by women, you know, pleading and begging for some of the men to do something because their children were at home starving. And it had a very strong effect on me. I had swore at that time that, you know, as a young man, fantasizing, daydreaming, I thought, well, I'm going to grow up and I'm going to help my people.
Inspired by the civil rights movement, city Indians traveled back to the reservations to look for an identity their parents had lost. My friend, Virgil Kilstraight, and I were young men on the Pine Ridge Reservation in those days. All of a sudden, Pine Ridge became the magnet that attracted newborn Indians. Virgil and I were the descendants of Crazy Horse's traditional Lakotas, and it was exciting for us to watch our city cousins rediscover their culture. The memory of that time, of that reawakening, is still bright.
We were like the library that never got used. You know, I think that's probably what I would say, you know.
the full-bloods never really lost anything. They've always had it. It was the people who came back in who gained quite a bit. It was the same people whose parents have lost quite a bit within that.
The city movement, you know, all of a sudden it was cool to be an Indian because all the other young white kids were epitomizing Indians. You know, long hair, beads, the leather clothes, you know, whatever it is, you know. It was always this, you know, and so then the Indian kid looks at this and he's trying to sit there, you know, wearing a shirt and tie and looking at it and say, hey, well, maybe there is something here, you know. So he looked back and he looked at the readings, the writings, and the books that was written about him. And he says, well, I like this, I like that, I like this. And then his interest was formed. Then he says, well, I'll ask my dad where I came from. He went back and said, oh, yeah, you have people living on the reservation back there, you know. So he comes back to the reservation and they maybe stuck him in a sweat lodge. And then they took all the doubts away from him. And now he's looking at other people and said, oh, there's old man kills enemy, there's old man catches, and there's old man this, you know, jumping bulls, two bulls, all of these. All of a sudden they are finding out they are like a people who recently discovered their face, you know. And they say, oh, wow, I'm here, you know. And then all of a sudden they said, okay, you have always had this. And I think this is what the role that the reservation had played.
Oh, good morning. My grandfather always said, good morning, and
In the old country, the young Indians met a Lakota medicine man named Henry Crow Dog. He was a living link to the past, to the old ways his family had maintained. He told the young activist that to be fully Indian, the new political movement needed a spiritual foundation. That what was most important was a spiritual connection to the land.
Everything is in place. Well, that's good. Everything is in place, and everything just the same is good. That's all right.
From the Holy Men, AIM members began to learn about the Black Hills and the long history of broken treaties. And they also confronted the stark reality of life on the reservation. In 1972, AIM launched a series of demonstrations with traditional leaders, which culminated in a march on the Bureau of Indian Affairs in Washington, D.C. The march to protest conditions on the reservation was called the Trail of Broken Treaties.
This is our land. This is our country. We're the native of this country. Right here, this federal ground is our property, yes. We want someone, one of our kind here, and doing our thing for us. Why in the hell do we have to put up with some I don't know people?
The Indians managed to capture headlines by taking over the Bureau of Indian Affairs. But when the occupation ended, television reports focused on major damage to the property. AIM had gone to Washington as a civil rights organization. Now they were seen as a threat by federal authorities, and they returned to South Dakota with a reputation as a radical political group. Back on Pine Ridge, AIM began a series of demonstrations against racism in towns bordering the reservation. Their growing activism in alliance with the traditional Lakotas put them at odds with the BIA-sponsored local government, then headed by tribal chairman Dick Wilson. It was a rekindling of the old divisions dating back to the days of Crazy Horse and Red Cloud. It was the old split between the hostiles and the hang-around-the-fort Indians.
Dick Wilson was elected in Pine Ridge, as many people have been elected before him and since him, according to the American system. But it didn't mean much to the old traditional full-bloods who lived outside of Pine Ridge, out in the